don't play checkers or chess anymore. I'm assuming that they do. I used to play chess a lot. I played this guy. He would beat me in 4 moves. The game was over. Good match. See ya. I mean, before I even sat down, I lost. And what was your favorite piece playing chess? For instance, they have the bishop. And the bishop I wasn't crazy about because the bishop wore that long dress. I mean, how could he fight and battle and win? I don't like the bishops. My favorite piece was the rook. That was my favorite because the rook was very manly. Very manly, I thought, like me. Although my wife may disagree. But it was manly. It has a rugged castle wall top. That's why I liked it. And then you have the knight. The knight to me in chess is a little prissy. Kind of like ballet. Because you move with the knight 1, 2 over. 1, 2 over. It's ballet. Prissy. Don't like the knight. And then you got the queen, who is the queen bee, because she can move in any direction, anytime, anywhere she wants. So everybody likes the queen. That's probably the best piece in chess. And then you got the king. And by the way, the king was very important in the Old Testament. Many times, kings who believed, and even non-believing kings, were used for God's bidding. Did you know that? For instance, like Cyrus, good old Cyrus, king of Prussia. No, not Prussia, king of Persia. Yeah. I believe Cyrus, he believed in many pagan gods. The book says of him, I say of Cyrus, my shepherd, who fulfills my every wish, he shall say of Jerusalem, let her be rebuilt, and of her temple, let its foundation be laid. So God used Cyrus, even though he worshipped pagan gods, he was used for God's purposes. He also used the king of Babylon also. So kings were very instrumental back then, and leaders still are today. But the king on the chessboard, not very instrumental. King's kind of useless on a chess, playing chess. He moves one space at a time. What's so great about that? You got pawns that can move 2 on your initial move, right? And then pawns, they're like lowly serfs you gladly sacrifice to get off the board. Nobody cares about the pawns. So the king, not much better. What countries, by the way, still have kings? I think Japan, Norway, Sweden. You would think Sweden, they have way too many tall, beautiful blondes with alluring accents to be bothered with a king. Why would they have a king? But I guess they do. I'm pretty sure they do. You know, thousands of years ago, the empires had kings. For sure they did. What were they back then? Philistines, Babylonians, Assyrians before that, Persians, all those guys. Kings, leaders. But kings from the very beginning. It seemed like everybody had a king back then, thousands of years ago, except Israel. No, Israel didn't have a king for the longest time. They were kingless, like being boneless. Boneless fish. And then more recently, they got boneless ribs. I think a new thing's coming out. There's boneless bones. Oh, yeah. People are buying those up like crazy. Boneless bones. That's the next big hot thing. But they were kingless. What Israel had years ago was this guy named Samuel. Not Samuel Adams, but Samuel the prophet. And he was a leader, a man of integrity, and he was honorable. And what he did, Samuel, back then, thousands of years ago, he appointed his sons as judges to basically overlook Israel and handle problems that would arise and so forth. But there was one big problem. The kids weren't like Dad. No. Samuel's kids were more like bums and rats. The book says his sons did not follow his example, but sought illicit gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. Which that kind of like sounds like any politician you meet, right? But generally, when kids take over the family business, many times that doesn't work. The kids try to follow in Dad's footsteps, and in 14 months, they run the business right into the ground. Like Saul's kids and kids of present day, sometimes they really don't care as much for the business and what they do and what Dad did. They don't have the same passion. So when it fails, sometimes it's really not a big surprise. So the Israelites, they didn't like being ruled by Samuel's sons, plural. There was a bunch of them there. They wanted, at this time, their own bona fide king. Yes, they did. Everybody else had a king, so they wanted one too. It's the same principle if you got a bunch of 5-year-olds. If 7 out of 8 have cookies, the 8th kid is going to want a cookie too, right? So the Israelites wanted a king, just like everybody else. Now, Samuel and God, as a matter of fact, they saw no need for a king of Israel. No, they didn't. And both of them, Samuel and God, they felt rejected in some way. But God nevertheless obliged. The book says, grant the request, but at the same time warn them solemnly and inform them of the rights of the king who will rule them. Having a king, it's not all peaches and cream. There is a downside to having a king. So Samuel let everybody know in Israel, this is the situation. This is what's going to happen if you actually get a king. And Samuel told them, I'm telling you right now, you will be complaining about having a king once you have a king. But they didn't listen. They didn't care. The Israelites still demanded a king. Now, just keep that in mind. Because in the meantime, as all this was going on, there was a man named Saul, some nobody from Timbuktu. Timbuktu, is that a real place? Evidently it is. I guess it's some kind of ancient city in Mali. Now, is Mali a real place? Where's that? What's that? Well, evidently, Mali is in Africa. And then I'm thinking, is Africa? That's strange. Is that a real place? Where is Africa? But evidently all three of those do exist. There is such a place as Timbuktu. Imagine that. I bet the board guy didn't even know that. Wonder if he has a song for Timbuktu. You never know. So the book says, Saul was a handsome young man who stood head and shoulders above the people. Head and shoulders. He stuck out of a crowd. Evidently, he was tall. Perhaps maybe he was like 6'6" or something like that. But maybe he stood head and shoulders above the people because of his intelligence or wisdom and personality, his aura, possibly, or all of the above. But he stood head and shoulders, evidently, above the people, according to the book. Sort of like the board guy. Yeah, he's like that. Very similar. So we're talking about Saul, some guy named Saul from Timbuktu. And as I said, he's head and shoulders, so he stuck out in a crowd. Let's assume that he was a tall guy. He wasn't as tall as one of those Bible giants like the Nephilim. Those Nephilim people, the giants of the Bible all over the world, I guess. They grew like 10, 20, 30 feet tall. Yes, 30 feet tall. That's 3 basketball poles connected to each other. Yeah, I measure everything in basketball poles. Actually, everything in basketball poles and football fields, because I can relate and visualize to that distance. So yeah, they were like 2 or 3 basketball poles piled on top of each other. You know, when somebody asks me, how far do I live from their house? Oh, I say about 3,472 basketball poles. Yeah, that's the answer I give them. Or maybe 115 football fields. And surprisingly, they say, oh, really? Oh, that's not far. Huh. I wonder what women measure in. Probably shopping malls. But you got to have something to go to, your go-to measuring stick, whatever that may be. So now, Saul, he didn't have much importance and responsibility in his life, evidently, because his father one day said, hey, Saul, come here. I got a job for you. And this job probably wouldn't be given to somebody that was busy with big responsibilities and duties like the board guy. I couldn't tell the board guy to go get me a cup of coffee. He's way too busy. You know, he's engrossed back there with all kinds of complicated buttons and levers and pulleys. Who knows? Yeah, I was thinking the other day, actually, one of my emailer guys, Steve, I believe, if I got the name right. I'm so bad with names. He said that the only parallel that you can include the board guy with would be the board guy on Star Trek. Remember that? Star Trek. There was a board guy in the what room was that called? The transporter room. Yeah, it was Scotty. Scotty, beam me up, beam me down. Yeah, he had a board similar to the board guy in the studio today. What do you think about that? That's cute, isn't it? They were very similar. So those are the only 2 board guys I know. In the studio and the one on Star Trek. Yeah, Steve told me that. He brought that to my attention. I said, you know what? You're right. Maybe that should be our theme song. I think that's to the movie. That's not to the TV show. Either way, it works. So, Saul, this guy from Timbuktu, his dad told him one time, he gave him a duty. He said, you know what? We just lost our donkeys. Somehow the gate was open, whatever. The donkeys roamed off the farm. They wandered off. We don't know where they are. Where are they? Nowhere to be found. So guess who was selected to go find them and bring them back to Saul's dad? Yeah, Saul. I mean, at the time, Saul was probably under a shade tree twiddling his thumbs. Not that twiddling your thumbs is not an important job. I mean, somebody's got to do it. His father told Saul, the book says, take one of the servants with you and go out and hunt for the asses. It was the whole thing was sort of like a human and animal game of hide and seek. You know, he had a thing. Now, if I was an ass, where would I hide? So he went out to find the donkeys, or that other word I used. I mean, that's legit, right? Don't want to overuse it. So he went to find the donkeys and bring them back. And that's not a pleasant job. No, that's not any kind of fun. It reminds me when my dog escapes my yard. It's terrible. I have no idea where he is. I'm wandering from house to house calling his name like a dummy. And then I find the dog like 3 blocks away. And then I got to pick him up and carry him back to the house. And the thing weighs like 50 pounds. It's like a block of cement. You know, I can have a heart attack. I'm coming up on 60 years of age. I can't be doing that nonsense. Hunting for a dog. So anyway, Saul was hunting for donkeys. Yeah, that was his distinguished job given to him by his dad. Now, why am I talking about the Israelites at the beginning of this show wanting a king and this guy Saul searching for donkeys? Now, why would I do that? Well, guess who became king? Yeah, it was Saul, this guy, this nobody. Totally unbeknownst to him, clueless about what was about to happen, never entered Saul's mind, no indication of future events. More specifically, Saul had no indication of God's plan for his seemingly present insignificant life. Samuel was told by God, the book said, or says, at this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin who you are to anoint as commander of my people Israel. So this guy Saul wanders into Samuel's city looking for donkeys, and then he meets Samuel and shortly becomes king of Israel. What's with that? I mean, Saul, he didn't expect that. He was like given a huge promotion without even asking for it, without even thinking about it. You know, surprisingly, that happened to me years ago. I used to work a night shift in the stock room at this foundry. And I was very anonymous. No one even knew I was there. I was very happy, nestled in the stock room, working night shift. And then this guy on day shift, who was the head honcho in the stock room, he comes to me and he says, you know what? I'm going to promote you to day shift. Yeah, you're going to run the whole show. You're going to do the ordering, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm thinking, I don't want this. And as it turns out, this guy that was offering me or telling me that I was promoted, he didn't offer me. He was telling me his main objective was that he wanted to move to the marketing department. And he had to find some schmo to take over his present position. I told him, no, I don't want your promotion. Go give it to the donkeys that we were talking about earlier, whatever. So anyway, I keep saying so anyway lately. That's my new go-to phrase as a time filler. I got to get rid of that. Anyway. That doesn't work. So that was the story with me in the foundry. And it's very similar to Saul. So as I said, Saul was told by Samuel, you're going to be the king. That thing in the stock room and that promotion, whatever it was, that wasn't right for me. That's not what I was supposed to do. I'd rather wait until something is what I'm supposed to do. Yeah, and sometimes we just wander around aimlessly, wondering what's going on, what is my purpose? Why am I even here generally in life? But you just got to be patient. Your time will come sooner or later. You know, things develop without you even knowing it. Like the instance of Saul, like Saul. So Samuel asked Saul, at first he asked Saul for dinner, for this special dinner right next to Samuel. And that was pretty high-class stuff. Dinner with essentially the acting king, Samuel of Israel. So Saul was asked, and then Samuel told Saul, don't worry about those donkeys you were looking for. They're already found and they were returned to your dad. So don't worry about that. The donkey thing, basically, that was just a ruse anyway to get Saul into the city to meet Samuel, right? I mean, the whole thing is such an amazing example of how God controls circumstances and people that come and go in your life. And we must trust God that God's will for our life will eventually happen, will eventually get done. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the future, it will happen when God says the time is right for you. Whether it's small, medium, or large events that happen in your life, life-changing events, they don't come around too often. But changes, positive changes, things that you hope for, they'll come your way. Just relax. Like a butterfly. What's that saying? You're trying to catch a butterfly like a maniac and it's always eluding you. But if you stand still and just wait, the butterfly will come to you and land on you. It'll land right on your nose. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Even with Moses and the people were told to stand still. I will fight for you. There's a time and a place to stand still and just wait. You think we got to have action all the time. I got to be doing something. I got to accomplish something. Well, a lot of times you do. Sometimes you don't.